We're about to get festive up in this bitch. Not really. But I have a Christmas tree. I have a Christmas tree and a card that says bruv on it from my brother. Inside it says have an elevated Christmas. Like Will Ospreay. Do. Ugh! Anyway, let's... That was chaotic. Let's just start the video. Hello everyone. How are we doing? We're locked in for another video of me yapping about Graps. In the new year, I am thinking of doing like some videos maybe not to do with wrestling, specifically. Let's be honest, it's my hyperfixation though, so like I probably will still bring it up. I am thinking of in the new year maybe doing some like non-scripted videos, because all of my videos have been scripted so far. I want to be a bit more like creative with my YouTube channel. I'm enjoying what I'm doing and I will keep on with like this kind of stuff. I want to branch out and see what I'm capable of. Also, I got a slightly different haircut. What do we think? Is it weird? Yeah. Do I love it? Yeah. If you can't tell from the way I present myself, I like weird shit, you know? It's long and then I've got like short pieces in the back. I put a clip on it. I think it looks cute. Anyway, ran over. First things first, I would like to give a big shout out to this lovely comment that I got that gave me the idea for this very video, so I appreciate that. It can be difficult to come up with ideas for videos, I can't lie. Yeah, so thank you so much for that. I absolutely love getting comments like this from you guys because it helps me get inspired for video ideas, so by all means, please keep them coming. It's surprisingly very hard to like come up with like new ideas for like content, so I do appreciate it because I'm but a single mind. If you have any more ideas of like things that you'd like to hear from me, please keep them coming by all means. It really helps me out, so I really do appreciate it. In this video today, I will be attempting to do a general summary of my thoughts regarding the independent wrestling scene in the UK. Before I get into the real meat and potatoes of this conversation, however, what does mainstream and independent wrestling actually mean? The key difference between the two is really the size of the companies who create the wrestling shows that they sell to people. For example, the biggest modern day wrestling companies I can think of from the top of my head are probably AEW and WWE. I mean, WWE has been around for years, like it's a titan, and they would both be considered mainstream wrestling promotions. Whereas somebody's more local wrestling company, with a much lower budget held in maybe like a local hall rather than a full-on stadium, would be considered more independent as a wrestling promotion. I got randomly interrupted by someone ringing the landline in our house. Who the fuck rings a landline? My breath from running to the phone and the bastard didn't even answer. I'm in a bad mood now. I'm in a bad mood, I can't lie. Because I had to run. Update, it was my dad ringing me. So, we'll attempt this again, but I might get interrupted again. Now, let us discuss the exciting stuff. I don't know why I attempted to do jazz hands for a minute there. Anyway, what wrestling shows have I been to see live myself? As you all know by now, because I did a camp wrestling review on it, like that was my last video. If you want to watch it, it's the first part to a 3-part series I'm doing, reviewing the entire AEW All In show at Wembley, London, like the first year that they came. I am planning to do it the second year as well, unless like I change my mind or something comes up, but I am planning to do that because they were both just really good shows. I really enjoyed them and they were great like big spectacles of a show, so if you want to watch that, I'll put the link in the description. You'll find it on my channel. If you want to hear me talk about mainstream wrestling, that's a good video for that. I have also been to see a lot of like independent wrestling shows as well throughout my years of like being a fan. Now I went to see a TNA show in Newcastle with my brother like I think 2 years back? I'm not sure. I was still in uni at the time, so I think it was 2 years ago. I think TNA is considered independent, though there might be some debate and speculation on that. They're definitely not as independent as like a lot of other companies, and they're not like an English or like Brit wrestling independent company. There might be some debate on that, and I also might just be like plain wrong. I might be just plain wrong, which is, you know, a likely story. I can be wrong on many things, so that's fine. In my personal opinion, I think at this point in time, TNA can be considered indie due to the fact that a lot of the wrestlers within the company take independent bookings outside the company as well, so if people want to talk to me like in the comments about like your thoughts on that, I'm more than open to that. Cheers, hon. It was a phenomenal show, and let me tell you, the crowd in Newcastle know how to have a good time. Y'all are fun. Y'all are really fun. They were hands down the best crowd that I've had the pleasure to be a part of, even outside of wrestling. Like, wrestling included, but I've been to like a lot of music shows and things like that, like music concerts, and that was just, it was a good crowd in general. Like, it was the best crowd I've been to. It was so fun. Pretty much everyone was pissed at that like wrestling show, and if you've not been to any like independent wrestling shows or wrestling shows in general, because I went to AEW and there were a lot of people drinking there, people tend to drink quite a lot just because it's like that kind of crowd, you know. It's a long show. It's usually like an hour or two, and there's like bars like very nearby and they're open. It's kind of like a concert in that sense, I guess, because I've been to concerts as well. So yeah, people drink, and it's a lot of like straight working class like white dudes, so like they drink a lot. Particularly in England, we have like a drinking culture, so they're like slugging back beers, and sometimes that results in like fights and arguments. Of that I give like a wide berth. Sometimes like in the like Newcastle show there were no fights, there was not any animosity, not that at least I saw, and everyone was just laughing and having a good time, which I really enjoyed. It just made the experience so enjoyable, including me. I was drinking and laughing. The crowd was so funny that I myself was pissed drunk, crying tears of laughter. For example, when the wrestler Moose came out, there was one guy out of the whole crowd who was cheering for him the entire time. And I was incredibly lucky because I had the privilege of that man sitting directly in front of little old me. Throughout the whole match, he was chanting things like, "Moose, Moose." And he was like saying that shit completely on his own. And eventually, as the match continued, another guy, like who was also clearly drunk as well, screamed and yelled, "Fuck you, Moose." And immediately after, he screamed even louder than the guy who was yelling, "Fuck me, Moose." And when I tell you that me and my brother were crying with laughter, like so hard, like, have you ever laughed so hard that like with someone or at something where you begin to get scared because you can't breathe? Like you begin to get concerned that like I'm not kidding, and it was also not helped by the fact that I was drunk, let's be honest, I was drunk. My vision was closing in, like it was getting dark, everything was getting blurry, I couldn't breathe, I was like getting scared, and that resulted in me having like fat ass anime tears streaming down my face, and like probably a bright red face of just me cackling, because I'm a cackler. I must have looked insane. I was laughing so hard that the people behind me started laughing at my reaction to the guy who was chanting Moose and saying all that like funny stuff. They weren't like, because he was in front of me, right? And people could hear the yelling and stuff, but not everyone found it as funny as I found it for some reason. I thought it was really funny. They were laughing at my reaction and didn't even like know what was happening there exactly, because I was right in front of them, so I knew everything. I was in trance. I was locked in. Oh, and Will Ospreay was there performing the main event and won, by the way. Now, Will Ospreay, bruv, he's one of those wrestlers and performers that you see in the ring. He moves in such a way that is so dynamic and so quick too, that, you know, you see a guy of his build. I mean, he's fucking huge, to be fair. Like, I saw it, like, they were doing signings in front of where we were sat at the Newcastle show. It was just in, like, a local hall. Like, he was stood there, like, in front of me at a table doing the signings, and he's fucking huge. Like, in real life, you don't really get, when you watch wrestlers on TV or, like, through a screen, you don't get that they're really big. Like, you can see that they're in great shape, but, like, next to these men who are, like, fucking roided up and huge, they look quite small. But when you're in like real life and you can see the comparison against like normal people's bodies like me and you, they're fucking massive. And then I start to think like, well, how big are these other fuckers, you know? Like, it's insane, it's intense. But yeah, after he won, I'm not kidding, he did a Type 5 comedy routine, and it was funny. I think he was definitely full of like adrenaline and joking about like the leaky roof that the hall we were in had or something. It was great. It was really fun. And me drunk, I was finding everything funny. I was like knee slapping. I was knee slapping at a lot of that shit. Sober, I'm not sure whether I would be, but it was funny. As he was like doing his stuff with the crowd and everything, with his like microphone and things like that, he was giving drunk uncle at a wedding energy in the best way possible. With love and light, Will. With love and light. This was also before he got signed to AEW. Like, Will Ospreay's in AEW now. I mean, if you're a wrestling fan, like, you probably know that. But I swear to God, I'm not making this up. I mean, it sounds like I am, and if people believe that, that is actually quite fair. As he was talking about, like, he began to, like, he was joking with the crowd, full of adrenaline, like, you know, on this, like, high, understandably. He started talking about new ventures in his career, and I saw him look over to a guy in the crowd as he started to get onto the subject of his like career, and I'm not kidding, like he looked over, began to start mentioning things like companies, because at the time he was with TNA, like that, it was a TNA show, he was there, he was signed to them, I believe, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he was. As he looked over to a guy, I saw a guy, because he was near our section, so like I noticed him, I don't think a lot of other people did, but as he looked over to this dude, whoever he was, the dude in the crowd shook his head and like give him like no, as if to say like don't mention anything, like, because I assumed that he couldn't like legally say anything, and maybe like AEW were already in the talks for him, not sure. After the show I mentioned it to my brother, like when we were back in the hotel room, we kind of got onto the subject of like I assumed he was signing to like a big company, because like why else would he not be allowed to like legally say anything out loud? Like I don't really see what other thing people would be like don't mention that to. From my point of view, maybe it was something else, I might just be chatting absolute bollocks. And that's a likely story, but you know, I remember at the time I guessed it was AEW, and I know that sounds like bullshit, but it was because like a few months earlier, he was performing at Wembley at AEW, like the first year, like the one that I, you know, just did like a review on. So I was thinking like, if he's doing stuff with AEW, and like that big a thing, like at Wembley, I would assume that there would be stuff in the works. Like, it's highly unlikely that there wouldn't be. But no one's ever gonna believe me. Like, I sound like a village crazy lady. Like, just yelling to the townspeople random shit. No one's gonna believe me, but that happened, I swear to God. Like, my brother could vouch for me. Will he? I'm not sure. But it did happen, I swear. I swear I'm not insane. Well, I am insane. I was fucking mind palacing that shit, like attempting to put that together. It was like slay. It was pretty slay. Also, two of my favourite female wrestlers were there at that show. Deonna Purrazzo. This is the shirt I have. I got this, I love the design on it, by the way. It's very like 1920s, like flapper girl, realness, we love. Anyway, her gimmick is as camp as a row of tents. She's known as the Virtuosa, and she enters the ring in a velvet robe, honey. Ooh! She enters the ring in a velvet robe as she does this, like hand signal to the crowd. She goes, love. Love! That's so good. And Naomi, but I think she was going by Trinity at that point, she's now back in WWE now, so wrestlers go by different names in different companies, because I guess it's like a legality thing. Her gimmick is basically like a neon rave gimmick, and you know, need I say more? I don't think I do, you know, that is good shit. It's good shit. I remember like seeing her live and feeling like weirdly nostalgic. Like I felt really nostalgic seeing her live, because when she was in WWE like a few years ago, not this time, like years ago, was when I first started watching wrestling, like when I was about like 16, I think I was. I get the year wrong, but I think I was about 16. We got delivered a parcel, so I had to answer the door. I swear, everything that could interrupt me today has interrupted me. It's not a big deal. But yeah, I remember Naomi's song being like so hype. And the arena, like when she enters and stuff, like her, you know, her like wrestling entrance, the whole arena usually goes like dark, and her outfit, because she wears like glow in the dark and like LED stuff, like glows in the dark, and it's like a slow, like, I think I'm talking about her old song. I'm not sure if her like new WWE song does this or if she's changed. I don't know. There's so much to keep up with in wrestling. I'm not sure about any of that, so if people want to tell me about it, I'd appreciate it, because I like Naomi. It like builds. It's like a do, and then it like goes up, and it's I used to listen to that when I used to run when I was younger. It was great. Loved it. It's good shit. It's good shit. It gets you hyped for a match. And those are the entrances I like that get you hyped for a match. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Believe it or not, I live in the middle of nowhere. And no, I'm not. I refuse to get any more specific than that because I actually I don't want to dox myself. You know, that's not on my 2025. Is that the year that we're going into? That's scary. I can't keep track of the years anymore. I'm only 22 and I feel fucking old. But yeah, that's not on my 2025 bingo card for next year, so I don't really want to dox myself. I actually saw a wrestling show that was produced in our local tiny village hall. But yeah, it was an LWF show and it was fucking great. It was really good. The highlight of the show for me was sorry, I'm just laughing thinking about it. It was so good. This dude who was a manager, and his name was, you're gonna have to brace yourself for this. If you're not sat down, sit down now, because this is artwork. It's a genius. We're in the presence of a genius right here. But his name is Just In Case. I know. The man's a living legend. I feel so honoured to be able to witness that. After the match that he was the people who fought, he was managing for, he got out a very clearly foam brick, which I'm not hating on. I love that. We all know I love camp media. Keep that. Don't you dare make that more realistic. It's fucking money. But yeah, he got a clearly foam brick out of his attaché case and his briefcase and showed it to everyone. He panned it, did one of these. He then proceeded to put it back in his briefcase and hit someone with it. That is phenomenal stuff right there, lads. It was mad going to see the show, because when I tell you I live in the middle of nowhere, I live in the middle of nowhere. There are hardly any fuckers around on the rare occasions I actually manage to leave the house. But when I was in town that day, girl, it was bumping. There was a lot of people there. I mean, it still wasn't busy, but it was pretty busy compared to most days. However, you kind of have to also keep in mind that I'm someone who's lived in a big city for 3 years until fairly recently, since last summer, because I graduated from university, so I've moved back home. And, you know, whilst I lived there, I was very used to getting into trains that are so packed that you can't physically move during rush hour like that. It's fairly normal to me, so coming back home and coming back to a place where there's not that many people in the grand scheme of things, it feels so dead. It feels really dead to go from too many people to not enough people. It's really weird. Speaking of, I moved to Manchester to study art at university for 3 years, and whilst I lived there for the 3 years that I studied, I went to see a couple of Future Shock wrestling shows. The shows I attended were held at Manchester Metropolitan Student Union, so I had to encroach upon enemy lines, as that is not the university that I attended. All jokes aside, the shows I went to watch were incredible. It was really professionally run, and the crowd had a really fun and playful atmosphere to it, which really makes a wrestling crowd, to be honest. I think people don't understand about I'm gonna sound like such an art person right now, because I am. That wrestling is an art form, is an art form that is really made, the crowd really makes or breaks it. And I think a lot of people in the wrestling scene know that, so they kind of know how to very cleverly harbour that kind of energy very regularly, which is a very hard thing to do. I really commend that. I have no idea how you go about doing that. Every single wrestler was an absolute joy to watch perform. The two standout wrestlers for me from the shows that I saw were Helen Charlotte Campbell and Lily Winter. Let me show you the t-shirts of the wrestlers I got. I love them. One sec. I plan on putting both of their Instagrams down below if you want to check them out, because they were both really fun for me to watch. Let's get into both of them. These two absolute divas, absolute icons. Absolute icons, these two divas. When HCC was in the ring, she was such a badass that I was like immediately hooked. I love seeing such strong and powerful female wrestlers in the ring. She was so talented and had like a huge amount of charisma. I absolutely loved her. Like I had no choice but to like, I was just watching her like so much. My eyes were just drawn to her. Yeah, I think, I mean, if we want to get into it, it's a lot of the reason why I like wrestling in the first place. For people who don't know, I mean, I've briefly mentioned it in my first ever video that you can find on my channel, but I used to be like a huge fan of K-pop when I was about like 14. I still listen to it. I'm like slowly teaching myself a little bit of Korean just to kind of like, I don't know, just for something to do. It's interesting. It's interesting learning a language at like my own pace. I quite like it. And it's something that I've listened to for years because of that. But I never realised until I got into wrestling for the first time and like slowly started to get into it more and more that, you know, watching things like K-pop and Korean dramas in South Korea with obviously the very mainstream media that they push out that I see as someone like from overseas. You know, like I don't live there, I don't know what it's like. It's a very limited thing that I see. It's a limited product that I see pushed to me. But they have quite a strict sense of what like beauty for women look like, and a lot of that is, you know, a myriad of different things that, you know, I can't begin to even scratch the surface of because again I'm not Korean and I don't live there, but you know, they tend to have a very strict like beauty type of like being really skinny. And as a woman who is not skinny myself and don't look like that, which is absolutely fine, it's fine to look like that, it's fine to not. You look the way that you look, and you know, have every right to be confident in your own skin in any sense of the, like, whatever that means to you. But I think, like, since getting into wrestling and being, like, quite a, like, I'm quite a curvy woman myself, I just am. It's like my genetics. I like food. There is nothing wrong with that. I've started going to the gym, and I really like lifting weights. I can lift about, like, 100 kg. Like I can hack squat 100 kg, and that I don't get to brag about that enough. I really enjoy being able to like feel strong. It's very good for me. I think it's very healthy. Yeah, I say all that to say, as I slowly started to get into wrestling, I didn't realise how refreshing it was to see women with so many different body types be seen as such like confident badasses, and that in turn I think has made me feel so much more comfortable in my own skin. Like I didn't realise how much of an effect watching people who didn't look like me had on me until I started to see people who did look like me, and it does affect your psyche, obviously, and it's a lot of the reason why I got into it as much as I did, and I feel so much better for it. It's great. Now let's get into Lily Winter. What a cool name, what a cool gimmick. She's giving Snow Queen realness. And when she walks into the ring, she comes out by Dear Goth by Cassiette. I think that's how you say it. I might be fucking butchering that. But yeah, an elite song. It's so good. I listen to it all the time. I listen to it at the gym. I go on the Stairmaster. I send that shit to that song, it's good. And if that wasn't all, when I saw her perform for the first time, she climbed up to get into the ring, and as she did that, she put her weight onto two dudes' heads, to like the top of their heads, to like steady herself as she climbed up. Slay! She slayed the house down, Boots works. Ew. Anyway, I sound like a middle-aged mum trying to say like gay. Gay lingo to seem cool. A woman who uses men to make herself more comfortable is a woman I have no choice but to support, hon. Yes! I love that shit. After the show itself, my brother and I went to buy some merch, and I got a little cheeky t-shirt or two, as I've showed before. As we were at the merch table, some of the wrestlers came over and got talking to us, and I remember thinking to myself that it felt nice to be able to tell someone face to face how much you enjoyed their performance. That goes for the people who work on the show who aren't wrestlers too, like outside of the ring. There are so many different people that go into putting something like that together, like a show, particularly an independent show together. Well, actually, also a mainstream wrestling show, there's like a bigger group of them, but it's still a lot of work. I think, like, people deserve a lot of credit, like, to pulling something like that off, like they all do. It's incredible. So, round of applause. You did good. One of my favourite parts of going to see a live independent show is seeing kids with their families and how excited these kids are. Like, they get swept up into the storylines so much that it's absolutely infectious, it's so adorable. And seeing the fans of every age talking to their favourite wrestlers as they smile makes me smile. It's just such a lovely interaction to be able to witness, and it's so wholesome, it's lovely. Fucking hell, hacking up a loogie. What? Anyway, I don't know. I'm in a weird mood today. Whatever. We're going with it. She's manic. Someone help her. But yeah, I think that's the part I like the most about independent wrestling. If I had to like sum it up in a way, it feels so much more personal and intimate than mainstream wrestling. And don't get me wrong, mainstream wrestling definitely has its place. It's definitely more of a spectacle. But I guess that kind of makes sense since independent wrestling is so much more grounded to the roots of where wrestling came from in the first place. For anyone who doesn't know, in the late 1800s to the early to mid 1900s, as a part of local carnivals, catch wrestlers would take on challenges as part of the athletic show, where locals could stand a chance to win cash if they could pin or submit the carnival's wrestler. As somebody who, yes, we all know that I'm like a fucking art nerd, as I studied art I studied at university for 2 years. Nope, 3 years. Got that wrong. But I also studied at college for 2, so I've kind of studied it for 5 years now. So I'm an art dweeb. Yeah, that means that I myself enjoy consuming many different types of art forms. And I myself really love how like wrestling is one of the few art forms that unapologetically has its historical roots in the working class background. Meaning it's one of the few art forms that actually to this day is still really accessible, which is so refreshing really, isn't it? As someone who loves painting and visiting galleries myself, that stuff is great, but unfortunately on the flip side of the spectrum, like, it has its historical roots in upper class backgrounds, meaning that unfortunately it actually isn't that accessible for most people. But the interesting thing that I've noticed throughout kind of watching wrestling and kind of liking high forms of like, you know, highbrow art is you always hear the phrase, wrestling isn't ballet. And what they mean when they say that is like, oh, you know, the two couldn't be more further apart, you know, like ballet is taken so seriously and wrestling is like this lowbrow, like manly sport, and ballet is this like graceful, elegant, you know, sport. But I don't think people in those spheres actually realise how similar the two actually are, because when you actually think about it and strip them back to like the bare bones of what they actually are, and I'm gonna sound like such an art person as I say this, but again I am, so I'm sorry, I'm an art person, so it might seem really like up my own arse, but this is something that I find interesting. Both take an incredible amount of discipline and athletic ability to pull off, and both tell a moving story to the crowd, like through emotion and physicality. And at the core in that sense, they are actually the same. Wrestling is kind of like ballet. The best way I can describe concisely what watching ballet and wrestling is like, because I've seen both live, and I've seen many different types of wrestling and ballet live myself. The best way I can describe what it's like for me in the crowd to watch these athletes perform on stage the way that they do is kind of like, you know when you see videos or in person, like ducks floating really peacefully and tranquil along like a stream in a river, and you think to yourself like, wow, they look, you know, really, really calm. You know, there's a saying of like, they take that like a duck in water, you know, it's like really natural. But if you actually see videos of like ducks from underneath the water, they're paddling like crazy to keep their heads afloat. And you know, I think it's very intentional, that it's very rare that we see the hard work and the effort that these athletes put in to get onto that stage, to get in that ring, to perform so easily in the first place. You know, you don't see all the mistakes or the kind of sacrifices in whatever sense that means to that athlete or to that person that they had to do and that it takes. And I think it's really important that we, as like a crowd members, in any kind of form of media that you enjoy consuming, whether it's ballet, wrestling, or anything else, it's important to kind of keep that in mind. You know, there is so much work and effort that goes into this as an athlete, and also the people surrounding it. You know, to pull off things like this that takes so many people behind the scenes too, to pull off like a cohesive show, and I think a lot more credit needs to be taken in that regard. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents. And it's something that I've noticed, and I think it's something that needs to be pointed out, because it's something that feels important to me, you know? Like, if I was working that hard, I would like people to recognise that as well, so. What is up, shaggers? Sorry, I'm, like, on one today, I don't really know why, I've woken up in a manic mood. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that video. I just want to say a huge thank you, as always, for all the support that I've been getting, view-wise, like-wise, comment-wise. It's really nice, it keeps me going, it's just a nice way to kind of stay on top of all this, and I'm really enjoying the process, so thank you so much, I really appreciate it. I have a few updates on kind of YouTube and kind of me figuring my way around YouTube. I have found out that the YouTube Shorts kind of like video side of stuff, I've been reposting a lot of the stuff that I kind of, I have a TikTok account. If you don't follow me on there, you can, you don't have to, I'm not going to force you, do exactly what you want, I don't mind. But I repost a lot of like the stuff that I do on TikTok onto my YouTube Shorts, just to like keep having content that's like going out on my YouTube whilst I'm working on these longer form like videos. And one of them like got like blew up in views in like a way that I obviously didn't expect. And in that video I mentioned that I'm someone who suffers with panic attacks, like a lot of people do. Some people can. I have a lot of friends who suffer with things like that. And it's a thing that I'm fairly comfortable being open about. I'm obviously not going to go into why I have panic attacks. That's a little bit more personal. I'm not comfortable with doing that, at least not at this point. I noticed on that video, it kind of got, because it blew up in views, I think it kind of like went outside of the side of YouTube that I'm usually a part of. So I got a lot of strange is the word I'd put, strange comments. I want to be open and honest and transparent with like the people who do watch my videos, who are very respectful, and I really appreciate that. If you've noticed that on that video I've turned the comments off, that's why. I was getting a big influx of like just weird comments that were just strange. They don't really affect me in any type of way. Like, I got comments that I get all the time of like commenting on my appearance or like calling me weird and stuff like that, and I'm not being funny, but if I'm a person, and a female presenting person who occupies spaces looking the way that I do, and you're calling me weird, I don't think that's gonna stop me. Like, it doesn't really bother me at all. Like, I have had worse things said to my face and I can manage that, so okay. The amount of like mid-level roasts just calling me like fat and shit, do you really think that's gonna give me a complex? If you're trying to give me a complex, be better. Like, you're not very good at it. Give up, you know? But yeah, it's whatever. It was something I kind of expected at some point. I'm a female existing in any space, so I'm gonna get grief for simply existing. That's just kind of how it works. But those people can suck my balls and eat glass. So I'm always gonna delete comments, and I'm always gonna like not give people the time of day, apart from like generally saying my thoughts on it as to why I don't like it. Yeah, in the new year I'm thinking of like doing like maybe some unscripted content, maybe stuff not to do specifically with wrestling. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. I probably will still talk about wrestling because it's a hyperfixation of mine, like, let's be absolutely for real. Like, let's be honest. That is the case. Also, a thing I wanted to mention, I've been watching recently, I mean I've watched for ages, a lot of like Japanese wrestling, more specifically female Japanese wrestling. Like, me and my brother watch the G1 every year. It's on every like summer. So if people would be interested in me kind of talking about Japanese wrestling, because I've talked about like the Brit Independency, and I've talked about AEW, I've talked about different things, I would love to like get into Japanese wrestling. Like, that is something that really fascinates me. It's like good shows to watch. I really like that. So that's on a more positive note. I wanted to say thank you to everyone who is treating me with respect, who is being supportive, I really do appreciate it. It makes things like that so much easier to deal with. Like, it's just, it is what it is. You can't stop people from like doing stuff like that. The only reason why I'm bringing it up now is so I can have like an open, an honest like discussion with you guys, because I don't want you guys thinking like, well, why has she turned comments off? Like, that's weird. That's why. Like, that's why I've done it. Like, for my own mental health. As much as they don't bother me, seeing stuff like that as I open my phone isn't the best thing for anyone's psyche. So I've just turned them off. I don't really care. And as I mentioned before, like, I was already planning on deleting comments, so it's my boundaries, and I'm never going to be made to feel like bad for my boundaries, so there we go. Okay, also, do we want to know where I got my top from again? Why did I do that? I just like stroked my boob. But anyway, I got my top from a shop in Manchester called Tokyo Go. They're really cute. They sell like Japanese like fashion goods that they like have imported. I'll send a link from like send a link as if I'm texting you guys. I'll put a link down below in the description of their Instagram, and they're very cute. I think you can order stuff online like through their DMs as well if you're like at all interested. But yeah, I got this from their like actual in-person shop. Look, you need to look at the back. It's got wings. Can you see? Can we all see the wings? Anyway, I should go now. I'm all hectic. I'm in a hectic mood. Ooh. Bye.